my family's taxes, so I know we got $808.50. We get an extra little bump for me and my husband because we live in a rural environment. And when I go back and look at what I spent last year in carbon taxes, because I was working from home, I wasn't commuting, my gas bills were way down, my and even the amount of tax that I paid on my home heating, because we're principally natural gas where I live, I would say that I probably ended up better off with that transfer. And so I think a lot of people would be of the view that if you're going to implement some kind of carbon or revenue neutral carbon pricing, that's probably not a bad way of doing it.
Maximizing your carbon tax rebate is really easy. But first, we need to know how much the increase will actually affect Canadians. Directly speaking, on April 1st, the carbon tax will increase from $65 per ton up to $80 per ton, a 23% increase. This will increase the cost of a number of items. That total cost and rebates you get back, which are also increased, will depend on where you live. I'm happy to say rural communities are getting an extra 20% up from their previous 10% premium. Carbon tax on food will increase it from about 30 cents per $100 spent up to 37 cents. Fuel will go from 14.3 cents up to 17.7 cents a liter. Natural gas will go from 12.4 cents per meter cubed up to 15.3 cents per meter cubed. And then other industries have different carbon price structures, but usually only pay 10 to 20% of the full carbon tax anyway. The overall direct and indirect effects had an inflationary pressure of about 0.6% before the increase, and now should be around 0.74. This is still a lower pressure than the volatility in energy prices, driven largely by fossil fuels, and 90% of these costs are returned through the rebates, meaning if you're a low carbon consumer, you end up positive on the rebates. The whole goal is to reduce emissions. Regardless, even small changes like this can have harmful impacts on people living paycheck to paycheck. So I'm going to go through potential solutions to reduce your carbon emissions and subsequent costs to maximize your rebate returns, just like Danielle Smith did in 2021. Should note that Canada's a big place, but 80% of us Canadians live in urban areas. The solution to eliminating carbon emissions for urban and rural places are a little bit different, and more challenging for rural areas. Hence why the premiums going up for rural areas is such a boon. But we have to remember the point of the carbon tax is to encourage a reduction in emissions. That happens at every level, from individual to local to provincial to federal. So let's jump right into it. There's a lot we can do on a personal level to reduce our emissions, starting with urban areas. Heating your house is a non-negotiable in most cases, so the place you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck is going to be on reducing your driving. Starting with the cheapest options, you have cycling, bus, transit, all have a giant impact on your carbon footprint. Even if you're not keen on doing this in the winter, cutting your driving by 50% during warmer months is still great. E-bikes can be a very cost-efficient way of reducing your driving needs. Diet changes have a small impact since farming is mostly exempt, as I showed in my previous videos. But buying local and at farmers markets can reduce your total transportation costs. I wanted to do a quick example to show you how beneficial reducing driving can be. You can clearly see from this chart that internal combustion engine vehicles emit way more than electric vehicles, even ones that are entirely on natural gas grids. But EVs are worse than ICE vehicles when we look at fully coal grids. Even though electric vehicles cost more CO2 to build, they cost less in the long run, with hydro-powered grids being the absolute best, or wind or nuclear being a little bit better. While electric bikes and diesel buses are the best option, assuming the bus is adequately used. What's even more interesting is that if instead of buying a new EV, you just reduce your car use on the vehicle you already have, you get comparable results to a hydro-powered EV car after 17 years, with just a 65% reduction in your driving supplemented with an e-bike. There's a million different combinations we can look at here, for instance working from home, light rail, or using hybrid vehicles, and just getting rid of your car alone can save you thousands of dollars per year. Not enough people vote or participate in local elections, though I think it's one of the most important things you can do for your day-to-day life. There's so much that can be done to decarbonize on a municipal level, it's crazy. Zoning laws for denser neighborhoods, bike lanes even if they're just painted on, and designating walkable neighborhoods. All of this reduces your commute distance, encouraging lower carbon lifestyles. Additionally, it reduces the commute times for industries that have to rely on carbon-emitting vehicles, reducing their emissions too. Getting away from car dependency is just a vote away, and it has a huge impact on your carbon footprint. The best part is that this is true for cities and rural communities. Believe it or not, every small town was walkable at one point. When we move to the provincial level, zoning laws are typically a mix of provincial and local oversight. The biggest thing the provincial government can do is expand renewable systems. This includes building out power line interconnections, more renewable power, and battery stations. Then investment in rapid transit projects, not to mention that renewables create more jobs than fossil fuels. I'm going to make a video on power supply markets, but moving to a longer contract system rather than a market one has a huge impact. This ensures the end user gets the best prices. This is part of the reason that the Spanish power prices are lower than Germany's with similar renewable levels. Danielle Smith has done the opposite of these two things in Alberta, leading to higher energy costs, because natural gas suppliers can charge higher spot prices if renewable energy is low. Then finally, on the federal level, the Canadian government, along with many other governments across the globe, including China, have implemented a carbon tax. But a lot more can still be done. Subsidizing renewables makes them even more attractive than they already are. If nothing else, just stop subsidizing a mature market like the fossil fuel industry and move all those subsidies to renewables. Creating carbon import laws ensures our market can compete fairly. Then investment in large infrastructure projects, like the Biden administration did with their infrastructure bill, is hugely beneficial to renewables and your wallet. I personally would like to see an EV vehicle rebate regardless of type, say $1,000 per person, that can be used on electric cars, bikes, unicycles, you name it. Overall, there's countless options to reduce our carbon emissions. All it takes is some will. If you follow the solutions I've laid out here, you'll make more back on the carbon tax than you spend, because the goal is to reduce emissions. If you take nothing else from this video, please just vote in your local elections. Thanks.